media executives will have to take posts advertising illegal knives down within 2 days or face a £10,000 fine. I'm sure that's going to put the shivers up multi-billionaires like Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg. It's part, though, of plans from the Home Office to make bosses personally liable for what's put on their platforms. It comes as Labour has pledged to halve knife crime levels over the next decade, including a proposed ban on ninja-style swords. Why is that stuff just not illegal anyway? Let's speak with Patrick Green, CEO of the Ben Kinsella Trust. Of course, the Ben Kinsella Trust to educate young people on the dangers of knife crime. Patrick, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
I mean, you know, there's a short answer that says any initiative is a good thing. You know, every little helps and all the rest of it. But I can't help but wonder, maybe cynically, because we've talked about this for so long, as you guys have, you wonder whether it will even touch the sides.
Yeah, you do, but it's important legislation nonetheless. The particularly holding social media executives account for what's being displayed on their platform. Social media companies have been displaying content which is normalizing knife crime, desensitizing particularly young people to knife crime, and glamorizing knife crime. There has been no sanctions placed on them, despite the fact that their platforms are, portraying knife crime in a certain way. This goes some way to holding them to account. I think £10,000 for many of those executives is a slap on the wrist. If you're a high street retailer and you sell knives, you're compelled by the law to sell them only to those who are aged over 18. And if you fail to comply with the law, you will be fined, or you could face 6 months in prison. So there's a strong argument that the custodial sentences should also be applied here to tech executives.
One of the, I mean, this won't be lost on you, Patrick, I know, but isn't it astonishing that we've reached a place where on my journey home I can fire up my phone and look at Twitter and I can watch, without looking for it, I can watch somebody committing a horrendous act, often a murder, in the streets, and it's not the kind of stuff they would never, ever have shown and still would never show on television. And even if they were going to show a little bit of it, there'd be big warnings. It just pops up on your phone every few minutes. Look, it's a couple of kids knifing each other to death in the street. I mean, we've reached an appalling, disturbing place when it comes to this. And I suppose all of those things are desensitizing maybe young people more so to the brutality and the reality of knife crime.
And it's been monitorized. The reason that the algorithm is repeating those graphic scenes to you is because it thinks you like them. And people advertisers are advertising, and tech companies are making money out of this. That's at the heart of this. That they've been profiteering while other people have been suffering. And morally that's wrong. But now we have to make a legal stance to make sure that they take responsibility for their platforms.
How does it work though in practice? Because, of course, these platforms are global. You could, with the best will in the world, you could say, well, we don't want this served into... I don't know whether they can harvest off that can only be shown in this country or that can be shown in another country. I don't know how that works. Maybe there is a way to do it, Patrick, but I would imagine, these guys who run social media claim not to be publishers. They say we're not like newspapers. It's just a platform. People do what they want to do, not our responsibility. And, some countries like America have amendments that protect them, no matter how gross it might be. Will that be a hurdle in the way of this?
Social media companies adapt to the countries they're in. I'm thinking of Saudi Arabia, I think of China, and I think of the restrictions that impose them in those countries. I don't see any reason why they can't come up with a solution to this. This is a relatively simple problem, for the tech companies. We're looking at fairly clear, distinguished content which we want removed. And the ability, the 16 years since the Ben Kinsella Trust has been in existence, it has never been easier for a child to buy a knife than it is today. You can go online, you can order a knife, legal or illegal, and it will probably be delivered to you next day without little or no age verification. there are simple measures that social media companies can put in place to stop this, but for reasons unknown to me, they haven't. We've had to go to legislation to bring an online harms bill in to try and hold their feet to the fire. We're having to bring further legislation in. This just shows you how social media companies are unable to self-regulate and are putting profit before the safety, particularly the safety of our young people.
Could the fine not be more substantial? Would that help? If I don't know, if you find the likes of Zuckerberg or Musk, you know, it's a $5 million fine if your platform in our country in any shape or form highlights, glorifies knives and knife crime. That's the fine that's coming your way. Why can't it go that far?
I don't see any reason why it couldn't. I don't see why it couldn't be a percentage of profits. I don't see why if you own a small shop and you're selling knives legitimately, and you are subject to a law which means that if you fail to comply with the law, you could end up in prison. Why would a small shopkeeper face stronger sentencing than somebody like Mark Zuckerberg? Yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me. This is a consultation, so we will be, as Ben Kinsella Trust, we will be replying to the government to make our feelings known. I think the public can do likewise. Yeah. It's a public consultation.
There it is. Patrick, thank you for your time. Appreciate it. Patrick Green is the CEO of the Ben Kinsella Trust. You may remember, I didn't realise it was 16 years ago, Ben Kinsella, who was stabbed and killed in the street. Again, the kind of crime, sadly, we have seen way too much of. And it was just like all of these crimes, you know, horrendous, unfathomable, you know, why would, you know, a young boy of such tender years, essentially, be the victim of something like that in the 21st century? Really? Yeah, that's happening. And it's still happening. And do you know what? They nearly always catch... This is the bit that I never quite understand. They almost always catch the perpetrator relatively quickly in criminal terms. Very rare you don't hear of somebody being nabbed, often within hours of an attack. And as we know, you know, some of these attacks take place in broad daylight as well. Kids aren't even hiding their faces, walking the streets with machetes, having flipping sword fights like it's 1582. But in a more lethal fashion. So their lives end at that point, as well as the person that they have stabbed, injured or killed. It is unfathomable, and it's curious that social media will have no way of removing that. Now, I'm not going to blame Elon Musk for that. That kind of stuff was around way before he took over Twitter. It's not just there, it's Facebook, it's anywhere else you want to look at. But isn't that kind of in itself quite curious? That you can just see that stuff like that, along with many other horrendous things. And you don't, you know, I've tried to block as many kind of accounts that show that kind of graphic nature. I don't even want to see school kids beating each other up, which is another one, you know, on a railway station. Oh, look, he chucked him onto the railway lines. I don't want to watch that. Why would I want to see that? You know, my little boy is 10. We've done everything to get rid of, you know, things like YouTube and stuff like that, which, by the way, is not the work of a moment. There's going to come a point when he's got access to that stuff, whether it's, you know, a way he's found a work, or he hasn't got a phone or anything like that. He's not of that age, and we've told him he can have one when he's about 29, and even then it's going to be a Nokia, which you can imagine how funny he finds that line, which is repeated no end. But there's going to be other ways to access it. You know, other mates who've got stuff. Look at this, you know, whether it's hardcore violence, hardcore porn, just the dregs, the worst kind of things. And that's passing for entertainment from young people. Some of those kids will sit there in bed scrolling through their smartphones watching nothing but that, because it will keep serving it up. And I think TikTok is probably a step ahead in terms of the algorithm that it continues to serve what it thinks you want to see.